Hello and welcome to the 17th episode of the Leadership in Construction podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and today I'm joined by the absolute brilliant Steve Turner. Steve is the Director of Lagan Aviation and Infrastructure and Airport Maintenance. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's really great to have you on the show today. I really wanted to sort of delve into how leadership has changed throughout your career and your views on leadership. And so also the sort of, you work in the aviation sector, which is obviously taking quite a hit at the moment with the current pandemic. So really wanted to understand from yourself behind, what is it that Lagan are doing around that. So, but can we start off really just by getting a bit of a background behind yourself, how it is you got into construction, what is it that led you on the pathway to where you are today?
Okay, I've worked in present employer for 25 years in August. I started off as a graduate from university, got a degree in civil engineering. Spent a fair few years bashing pegs and taking levels and setting out, and just generally over that years, as the projects came on, you took on more and more responsibility, and eventually you get to the point where you're looking after a couple of small businesses within the group. So it's been an interesting career so far, and I spent a lot of time working overseas, working on aviation projects, road projects. So that's really about it from a career so far.
And so it's always sort of been aviation then, mostly, has it? Always sort of airport related?
The majority's been, it's probably 20 odd years that has been aviation, airport related, and then a few road projects along the way. One in 5 miles from my house, and another one in Jamaica.
Oh, right.
Which were two really interesting places to work for different challenges, different experiences.
Yeah. And I can't ask you to pick out one project that you sort of like the most, because there's too many, I'm sure. Which one would you say you probably learned the most out of?
I think the one where and the colleagues always give me feedback on this, members of the team, is the project in Guernsey Airport, which your company was involved in as well, Michael. And that was a challenging project. A lot more than just construction to think about. It was logistics, it was community relations, it was social value sides to the project. So it was also one of the biggest projects I've been involved in. So it was challenging from all aspects, and it was one where at the position I was in, there was no one else to pass the problems to. We were remote, we were away from our headquarters. We had to solve all the issues as a team. And I think that's the one I probably learned the most on, developed the most on.
Yeah, you had huge amounts of sites set up and cabins where people basically stayed out on the island for many months.
Yes, and that's an important point. It was also, you were responsible for the welfare of the workforce as well, and welfare of keeping them fed, keeping them in decent accommodation, keeping them out of trouble, keeping them motivated in the project. So it was more than just construction. Yeah,
I mean, you talk about social responsibility and community, and I think that's one of the things that really stands out for Guernsey, for me, from what I remember from it. I wasn't too much involved in the construction, but I was sort of around towards the end and right at the beginning in the early days. The sense of that Lagan has, and the importance around Lagan's focus on community engagement and social responsibility. I mean, what was the sort of key takeaways from sort of community support that you found at Guernsey? Because there's huge lorries going through very sort of small back roads, and a lot of disruption, travel disruption, all sorts going on. What did you sort of get? What was the biggest thing and the takeaways you can take from that?
There's probably a few things, and as a company, if we're honest, up to that point, we hadn't really focused much on social value, because our projects were largely inside a fence, inside an airport, and whenever we were working, there was actually less disruption to the local population because there was no planes taking off. So this was different, because we were actually right in the middle of the community. And I suppose two things you take from it: that how would you feel if you had 500,000 tons of aggregate being shipped past your house 14 hours a day? So you put yourself a wee bit of the people's position. And the second thing too, and this sounds, it's not meant to sound as selfish as it is, but because we dealt well with the community, my life as the project manager was a hell of a lot easier, and the client's life was easier, and just made an awful lot of stress and complications on the project by taking that front foot approach to dealing with the local communities and dealing with them in a way that was proactive and being honest with them as well, that we made a lot of mistakes along the way. We did a few things wrong, but we were always open and honest about how we dealt with those.
Yeah, and that's really admirable. I mean, I think knowing Guernsey and the likes of Jersey, the residents are very proud of their islands and very proud of the way they are. So a huge infrastructure undertaking on their island is a lot of change for a lot of residents. We know what the sort of change has effect on people. So certainly getting engaged with them and really sort of meeting that head on, I think, shows true leadership. I think that really shows huge amounts of community and engagement and support. So that's really sort of amazing, because I mean just the lorries that going on the roads are not typical Guernsey type lorries, so the roads usually weren't up to standard. You have to do sort of any road improvements whilst you were there.
Yeah, it was probably, if I think about the interesting thing about the project was construction projects by the nature things go wrong, and normally when something goes wrong you go through the process of what you have to do. But interestingly on this particular project, when something went wrong, you went through all the ABCs. We have to fix this, and oh dear, what about the community relations side of it? Because we had to tell people that we'd done things wrong, and some of them were quite visible, and you couldn't have swept them under the carpet. So it was interesting from that perspective. And say on the mass logistics, we learned a bit working in communities in some of our projects back in Northern Ireland and the mainland, and it kind of helped. But develop further onto this project and say it was a key takeaway from mine was just how important it is to deal well with the communities you're working in.
And how much of a takeaway that is working in Guernsey now in your current project or the projects you worked on more recently? Do you have that same sort of culture and that same sort of engagement now in projects which aren't on an island and affecting the local environment as much?
It's a matter of when the project comes along, 'cause they all have their wee different pieces to it. You have to develop your plan on that. Some of the stakeholders could be as simple as on a project that we did at RAF Marham, is the people jogging around the perimeter track who were close to the works, those sort of stakeholders. So it depends on the project, and you have to identify the key ones, and you have to make sure that you deliver the project with minimal impact upon them.
I mean, I think that's really important, and we can relate that to sort of a day-to-day basis. So always trying to remind ourselves about who are we building this for and who are we impacting, and sometimes the typical response, the contractor, because they've got to work out how to build it. No, we're not designing this for the contractor or the client. Well, not quite the client. Think about the on the airport it's a little bit more difficult sometimes, but think about the people that are going to be using it. You talk about staff that are doing their exercise around the site and taking their views and opinions and values in consideration goes a long way, I think, and really does help. And it actually helps the people working on the project relate to what they do on a day-to-day basis, why it's so important. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It's something that over the last 10 years is a big change in that. And even if we reflect back on we mentioned a road project in Jamaica, you talk about social value there. Well, we were building a 56-kilometer road from one side of Jamaica to the other across the mountains, and we were dealing in numerous parishes. You were dealing with everyone from a yam farmer who's got some yams growing on the side of the road. And I remember on one occasion we dug a culvert and wrecked all his yams. And they have a different way of dealing with engagement in Jamaica at that time. It was quite a testy place. But you realise that guy who was farming the yams, that was his livelihood, and that was so important to him. So you learn very, very quickly that you had to deal properly with communities, deal with them honestly, deal with them respectfully, and realise that ultimately we're there to build a road. This road was for their benefit, but at the same time you didn't want to have it destroying livelihoods and wrecking how they lived.
That was effectively affecting his source of income and feeding himself, being family, that. But equally, once you've helped him out and you've built the road, that could probably improve his business, improve his trade potentially. So
because there'd be more tourists on the road, there'd be more business opportunities. So it was a long-term benefit. But at the same time, for the year we're building the job, he still had to feed his family and be able to sell his products. So it was a very, very quick introduction to me on the on the importance of social value. And
Wow.
Unfortunately, that learning was by a lot of mistakes and a lot of pissing off a lot of people.
No, I mean that's very honest of you and really commendable. Is that? I mean, we a lot of people, including myself, we learn by mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. But if you don't learn from them, you just keep making the same mistake. That's when it starts to frustrate people. And I think what you're talking about is a huge topic in terms of just ethics. It's very easy just to say, well, we're here, we've got to build this, we have to build this, we're on a tight schedule, and I couldn't care about your yams. I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah.
But to take a different spin on it and to actually help, it's ethical, it's engaging, and all their experience of Lagan and the construction on that island is all the better for it. So whilst we're on the subject in terms of projects and sort of the aviation sector, obviously at the moment in the current pandemic, we're experiencing a fluctuation in terms of workload and the ability for clients to be able to do certain repairs, keep up in terms of maintenance. And I know that's a big sector of your business. So on one hand, you've got less planes flying, so it's a prime opportunity to get out there and do any repairs that you can. On the other hand, you've got less planes flying, so you've got less income and less ability to fund those kind of things. How is Lagan sort of finding the struggles at the moment, and how are you sort of meeting them head on with your clients?
Well, on the capital projects, I think the realistic view there is that there's just no money to spend. People haven't generated money for a year, and you understand that as a business. What we've really focused on, and we've got really good examples of it, is what are our clients going to need for the next 3 to 4 years till they recover? Because that's the period you're talking about, and that's focusing on making the most of the assets. So we did a project recently on an airfield in Scotland, where we went to the client, we talked them through repair opportunities, how long repairs are going to last, what repairs we did, undertook the surveys for them, and we're doing that on an airport in the north of England at the minute. So what you're providing for your clients is some surety and we would have expertise into what they can do to make their asset last longer, because that's going to be the key for the next few years until they start generating revenue to reinvest in large scale improvements. So there's an awful lot of time and effort spent on that, and I think that's just focusing our business on what our clients need at the moment. It's a little bit different on the defence works. It's a little bit different. That's not quite business as usual. There are some delays on it, so you're just working with your clients. Their projects are getting delayed a little bit. You're having to be a bit more flexible and adapt on that. And then the other part of it is you have to what's the word? Diversify. So what we're looking at the moment is developing other parts of the business based on what we've done on airfields. On airfields, we manufacture materials, so we're looking at material manufacturing opportunities at the moment. General civils, a lot of our aviation projects, if you take, for example, Guernsey or RAF Marham, probably over half the value is civil engineering, and sometimes quite complex civil engineering. So we're looking to do that in different places at the moment until the aviation industry recovers. So it's diversification, and it's trying to help understand what our clients want now and trying to help them to get that in the sweating their assets.
And so what are clients of aviation clients, their sort of biggest need at the moment? Is it just buying time? Is that what their sort of biggest need is at the moment?
That's how it feels in the market at the moment. It's just and it's very understandable. If I earned no money for a year, I wouldn't go out asphalt my driveway or upgrading my garden. It's just, you just don't do that, because you don't have the finances to do it. So it's just keeping things, the minimal amount of maintenance over the next few years seems to be the recurring theme.
And that in itself is a challenge as well, because maintenance is kind of a double-edged sword. You can put it in now and you hope to get sort of 3 years out of it, but they're never really tested to that level degree, and a lot of it requires on what you're putting that repair down on, if that's suitable to receive that repair. So it's quite a tough one, and I think a lot of my experience is once a repair goes in and it's seen as temporary, it's probably still there 25 years later, holding bits of the airport together, and that's when major maintenance needs to come in. So, no, I mean that's really interesting, and it is a tough time, and it's good to sort of hear how you're sort of helping out.
We've worked with a few clients over the last year as well on the cost benefits and trying to get work done during quiet times, where because the cost comparable of getting 6 hours a night to do a project as opposed to 24 hours or 12-hour access is quite considerably cheaper. We have done that, but then for a few clients, but the reality is they didn't have the funds, and that's just the nature of the industry at the moment.
Yeah, I mean that is the one thing that I suppose we haven't mentioned, is that a lot of maintenance and major schemes at airports all done at night when there's either no flights or flu flights, and you can get in and do the repairs that are necessary. But as I say, this pandemic does present that opportunity to, if you have got fewer flights during the day, to get in and do those repairs during the day, which has a dramatic cost on the actually doing the repairs. So. Yeah,
I recall a few years ago that similar to this is when the ash cloud flights.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different because there was an end in sight for that, and we had some clients, right, let's change how we're doing this job, see what you can do. It didn't last very long. It ended up with the ash cloud, thankfully, so it's not the same impact as at the moment.
No, I remember wishing to get some repairs done at Belfast during the ash cloud point. But yeah, no, that's great. So just to sort of bring this over to sort of leadership then, you've obviously got a wealth of experience throughout your career and working from, as you say, hammering in pegs and doing surveying to now sort of running an organization. How has your sort of view on leadership changed from early days to sort of now, and how's that sort of grown and come about?
I think the how you've learned about leadership is probably important in this. Is where the really good thing about my company is that when we first started out in the aviation, we didn't have really formal training plans, or it was a fairly basic way of doing things, and that was great because you got a position where, right, all of a sudden you were project manager, and you'd saw how it had been done for the years before when you were doing your apprenticeship on the way up to it, and suddenly you were responsible. And I think, to me, that's a big part of leadership, is that you are responsible. You've got no one else who you can pass your responsibilities to. You have to get things done. You have to either get your section of the work complete, get your projects done, manage your business unit, make money, design your project, or whatever. So I've been in positions where all of a sudden you get the shiny nice title of project manager, and it's wow, I have to build this job now. And it supplements or like you do a small amount of leadership training along the way, where you can read books, you get snippets from that, you go to your courses on things like emotional intelligence and the like, but there's nothing's ever replaced that just being in that position where you sink. It's not quite sink or swim, but it's actually almost where you have to take this by the reins. You have to focus on it, and along the way you've made mistakes, and you've done things wrong. You look back at some of the decisions you made and you cringe. You look back on how you've spoken to people or dealt with people and you cringe, because there's a lot of really good people that I've dealt with along the years, and I look back now and said, God, if I had done X, Y, or Z a wee bit differently, that could have had a better outcome for them and me. We could have got the job finished more efficiently or whatever. So it's been an evolving process, and I think as we mentioned back on jobs, you still make mistakes, you still do things wrong, and a large part of the challenge in life is that you're always chasing perfection, and the more I've gotten, it's taken me a long time to realise this, because I'm a slow learner, is it doesn't exist. And the key bit of leadership is you have to make sure that things aren't perfect. When they're not perfect, be there to help and guide and sort it out, but at the same time, don't be beating yourself up forever on bad decisions or mistakes. And I think there's one of my ex-bosses always had a great term about if the dog bites once, it's the dog's fault. If the dog's bite twice, it's the owner's fault. So I was saying that you can make mistakes, but just don't do the same one twice. Thankfully, so far, I haven't made too many twice. Probably haven't maybe got away with a few, but it's and that was the key bit about leadership for me, was in the position where you just had to get things done, had to deliver, and that's where I learned about it and continue to do that. Where during the pandemic, different challenge. We didn't have the challenge of building projects, because all our projects generally got stopped, cancelled, or or paused, we had to do things differently. We had to keep a workforce engaged. We had to keep people through furlough engaged and motivated. We had to go out and find work. So it was a different challenge, but it's one that, touch wood, we're getting the point of it where things are starting to pick up now and jobs are starting to come. We had to keep everyone engaged and motivated for a full year of really not doing an awful lot. And I learned in that about staying calm. Had to stay calm during this because there was nothing we were going to change. All the stress in the world, all the sleepless nights was never going to change where we're at. We had to be honest with the people and we had to communicate to them what the plan was to try and get out of this. And it's gone as well as it could have been on that. It has been challenging because you're constantly thinking. We had a briefing with the team before Christmas. Things were looking better. Then you have a second or third. I've lost track of the lockdowns. Third lockdown. Yeah. And it puts things back a wee bit because some of our projects have got paused again. And it's that sort of trying to keep constant communication and being honest with people where things are going. Whenever we're flat out building projects, I didn't have any of the challenge I had last year because we always knew that there was project A was being built, project B and C were being tendered, and we had a good success or a good chance of being successful on those, and things moved on. So yeah, it's been a different set of challenges over the last year.
I mean, I think what I get from that more than anything is that leadership is something that just continually grows. You're continually learning. New challenges come along, and then you've got to adapt, and you've got to try and lead through those. And it requires different skills at different times. Very sort of situational. And it's also interesting in the way you sort of explain it. And I think sort of doing something one way and realizing that didn't work, I'll try and adapt it the next way. Very much sort of like myself, sort of new to leadership, sort of making some big mistakes and realizing, okay, that's probably not how to get things done. Like going back and learning and researching it, and then speaking to people like yourself. This has helped me as much as I hope it helps other people. Learn that it's okay to get things wrong. You're expected in a way to get things wrong, but have feeling supported and learning from the mistakes and not making the same mistakes again too many times. That's just the key thing. Yeah, that's really important, and I really do appreciate you sharing that with us. So I wanted to ask, as a sort of as we wrap this up a little bit, is a question that I ask absolutely everybody is, what do you think is the most important aspect of leadership?
Probably is what I've learned over the last while and last year is setting another ex-boss called it the direction of travel. Is always be clear on that and have that in place and be prepared to adapt it slightly, but always have that here's where we're going. Rather than an awful lot of navel gazing or backward looking. I think that's important in leadership. Yeah, you learn your lessons from the past, but at the same time, your focus has to be where we're going, and that can be as simple as if you're building a project, always be thinking about the next phase of the works, how you're going to do that, as opposed to finishing off where you're going at the moment. Or in doing what I do is making sure that we have opportunities and tenders and turnover coming from different ways. But it's that sense of direction or direction of travel is most important. But
and what's the direction of travel for Lagan then? What's your vision for Lagan?
It's getting to a point where we don't have our business was largely MOD and civilian airports. That's what we've done over the last probably 10-15 years, is to have a bit more diversity in what we do. So dipping into more general civil engineering, dipping into material supplies, dipping into remediation, which we've done a remediation project this year, something we have never done before. So it was cleaning up a site for a property developer. So it's having a really diverse business, and along with that is the focus of last year was growing our maintenance business. So if we go to a client, we can offer a lot more. We can maintain your airport, we can do your capital works in your project, and then hopefully that will apply to other clients in different sectors as well. And maybe the key thing is be ready for the growth in aviation again. It's going to come. History tells us that there's always be dips and comes, and it's making sure we still have the expertise and people who can do it. Because it's very easy to get rid of your people. That's the easiest thing in the world. But to find and replace the brilliant people we have in our teams, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen. It's years to build a team to where they are.
Absolutely, cannot agree more. Yeah, I think similarly that's been our sort of main focus is continually to grow the team, keep the team together, and to be ready for when, as you say, that the aviation sector picks back up again. Because when it will, I'm sure it'll be big. So
yeah.
Well, this has been a real pleasure, Steve. Thanks ever so much for your time.
Thank you.
And really thank you for everything you shared with us. So,
great. Okay, no problem.